Why do we like to see each other die? Now, before we had action movies and horror movies, we had just war. Before we had stories and books, we just had war. Um, and there's been quite a bit of human sacrifice, and I would say that war itself is a kind of human sacrifice. When two nations decide that they can't come to terms with one another, then it's almost always a possibility that they could have, but they just didn't want to. They didn't want to back down. They didn't want to seem weak. So they are willing to sacrifice their own citizens and sacrifice the citizens of those of that power that they are fighting, that opposing power, whether it be another country, another alliance, what have you. Um, we like action movies. We like horror movies. I just can't figure out why. Um, Somewhere deep down inside of us, we're frustrated with everyone else. Not because of everyone else, but because of ourselves. Because we can't look at ourselves and make an accurate judgment. We say, okay, if I believe this and so many other people are different than me, believe differently, then obviously they're wrong. There needs to be some kind of cleansing. A Mars-like cleansing. The Romans believed that Mars would come down in the form of a person and cleanse the earth of all the corruption, and then Mars would allow a new age of the gods to either be created or maintained. And a lot of Romans believed that Caesar and the emperors were the incarnation of Mars, the god of war. Ares in the the Greek pantheon, but Mars and Ares, and I've worked with Ares quite a bit. They're both the brutal side of war. They're both the frenzy, the chaos, the confusion, and using that to your own aim. So when we have, it seems like no matter which God epitomizes this within ourselves, we always have that desire to bring up that primordial strength, that primordial fury, that primordial fear a lot of the time, because fear is definitely an aspect of war. And when we want to bring it up in the past, wars are still going on, people are still dying, people are still hurting one another, people are still putting themselves over someone else and reaping the benefits of a society, while the majority in a society are actually inhibited by the few reaping the benefits of the many. But I think that that's why we have horror films. That's why we have action films, is because there's this primordial need to see harm done, and this frustration that the vast majority of humanity just isn't like us, and that scares us. That scares us deep down. So we want to see everything. We want to believe everything will collapse upon itself within our lifetime, because we're afraid of what will become. We're going towards a generation again and again and again that's different from us, that is beyond us. And that has always scared the older generations. You can go all the way back to Homer in the Iliad, and it talked about how men are worse in the Iliad, and how, men as Hector was, he could lift far more than men are now, is what Homer said. So just, generations back, he believed that Hector of Troy could lift a boulder and throw it. But men have gotten weaker and weaker and weaker. And in the basic Greek idea, you have this descending. So I think it's that you have the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. So you have the Heroic Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age, and then it goes back up, I think. Don't quote me on that. But I actually think we're entering Dwapara Yuga, an ascending age, or a heroic age, according to the Greeks, where you're going to see a lot of heroes rising that perform great acts of compassion and personal strength. We're just on the cusp of becoming better. The older generations don't think so. The older generations think that we've always been becoming worse, and especially if you're biblically inclined, then you think since Adam and Eve we've just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But if you just look at something like segregation or slavery, or the rights of women, you can see that these things art are improving. I mean, there's still slavery in the world, but it's called by different forms. But all of these things are improving. We're actually becoming better people over time. I don't think that can be argued against. You know, Adam and Eve are shown to be, you know, the epitome of what a human being is, but you know, it was just 60 years ago or more that we got rid of segregation in the United States. Slavery was made illegal, you know, decades ago in most countries, but now slavery is called by different names, but that's a different thing. We're working through our nationalistic identities and our association with country, and realizing that association with country isn't enough. We have to be associated with being a human being, with our hearts intact, with our understanding that if I'm going to help my neighbor, if I'm going to help another human being, then that's just the same as helping myself. And I think that we're starting to see that kind of compassion in the world now. And of course, vegetarianism and veganism is, of course, on the rise again. People are starting to realize how terrible slaughterhouse culture is, and the factory farming that exists in the United States really is. And there's a lot of people trying to go away from that. And women's rights are booming compared to anywhere in the past, according to recorded history anyway. People are starting to accept each other's sexuality. I mean, these are just examples of tolerance and acceptance that we haven't seen before. So I'll come back to my main point. Why is it that we want to see horror films and action films where people die, where they're tortured? We still have that instinct of exhilaration. It still brings a drive into us that of excitement, because it's based on the fight or flight instinct. When you see somebody dying in front of you, when you see somebody hurt in front of you, when you see somebody like doing something in combat that is amazing and ridiculous a lot of the time, we often picture ourselves in that circumstance. And when we see it, we think, oh, how badass is that? Oh my God, look what he did. He shot like 3 dudes in the head with 1 bullet, whatever. It's all going back to us trying to reprogram ourselves slowly to not want to do those things to other people. So in society is more orderly than it's ever been. We're working our way away from that, but there's still that instinct, that urge, that excitement when there's a battle, when somebody dies, that that brings us away from examining ourselves. That's what it gets down to the heart of. Because the more you rely on instinct, the more you do not examine yourself. Now, when you examine yourself, you're going to enter a lot of thoughts about, you know, why do I do this? What are my motivations? Where do I think I'm going to go when I die? Why do I believe this? Why do I believe that? Are my beliefs valid, or is there really no meaning? You're going to enter a lot of these questions, and instinct, excitement drives you away from that, and it feels good to be excited away from those deeper questions, to make those waves instead of plunging deep. So I think that action movies and horror movies are a way of making us numb to really looking at ourselves a lot of the time. But I don't want to be too judgmental of them. I don't disdain action and horror movies. I watch them. But there's also that primal instinct, that excitement that we still get from seeing people harmed, from seeing some amazing battle where somebody does something awesome that is worthy of somebody like Homer writing about it. Of course, Homer was probably multiple people over hundreds of years. But anyway, hey, why do you think we like horror and action movies where people are harmed, where they are hurt, where they're in pain? Why do we like to see that? Why are we excited by it? I've listed that as instinct, and we're working away from that in modern society, but there's that backlash of, oh, we still kind of want this in a way. I don't think that we're inherently evil or good. I think that we actually lean towards more being inherently good than evil, in my own understanding. But at any rate, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot them down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear why you think we enjoy action and horror films. And if you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/darkrealist. So www.patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. And if you support my channel for just $1 a month, that greatly helps all the work that I do, and it helps me afford spiritual implements and to go out and actually make more videos. So just $1 a month would be amazing. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see all of you on my channel in the future.